Welcome, everybody. Turn this music down a little bit. Welcome, everybody. This is Dwelling of Duels. I am your host this evening, Katajun, and I am joined by none other than the man, the cannon, Danimal Cannon himself.
Hello.
Sitting here, joining us directly from the ready room of the Starship Enterprise. You know what you should have done? You should have worn your Picard jumpsuit.
I have it in the other room, but I didn't want this to get confused.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks so much for joining us, Dan. It's great to have you here.
It is great to be here, Austin.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting all my things balanced out. I want to make sure that this music... Yes. Okay. Yeah, so Danimal Cannon extraordinaire, it is great to have you here. You are, where... You've done a lot of things.
I've done things.
You've done a lot of things. You're a very, very talented chiptune musician with your dual LSDJ Game Boys.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a TED Talk in the past.
Oh God.
You're a game composer, sound designer. What else am I missing? You're from the band Arm Cannon, of course.
Yeah.
Metroid Metal.
Metroid Metal, and I am hosting a YouTube show about Star Trek.
That's right. Has that kind of been your pandemic sanitarium act, keeping you sane?
Honestly, I just thought of it like 2 months ago, and it's been my shiny thing in front of my face that has been devoting a lot of my attention to. And I've actually liked how it's been turning out so far.
It's been very enjoyable, as myself being a pretty large Star Trek fan as well, specifically Next Gen. I've really enjoyed what you're doing. And
fantastic, thank you.
Over the pandemic, I know I had talked to a couple people who were looking for new shows to watch and stuff like that, and I was always just like, "Hey, watch Next Generation."
Yep.
And they always get a couple episodes in, and they're like, "Is it always going to be like this?"
I just tell people don't start with season 1. Like
that's a very good plan.
Unfortunately, I'm starting with season 1 because
right.
I'm a dumb person, but I wouldn't do that.
Well, it's a great show, and I say to everyone out there, if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and check out Danimal Cannon's Trek Watch. But of course, this is the Dwelling of Duels channel, not the Trekking of Stars channel. So
true.
Your history in Dwelling of Duels goes back pretty far, honestly.
Was that 2005?
I believe so. I think if we look at your Danimal Cannon artist page, your first entry was 2006. But if I have my history straight, you didn't enter your first song as Arm Cannon, right?
Wow, well done. That is some obscure trivia you got there. I was about to correct you, and then I was like, "Oh man, is he gonna get it?"
Yeah, no, One Winged Angel, Final Fantasy VII.
Oh man, yeah, it's really bad. Don't listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
However, somebody uploaded it to YouTube probably in like 2009 as like One Winged Angel Metal, and it's got like 500,000 views or something.
Well,
it's terrible. It's terrible. Don't listen to it.
I think it's amazing to check that song out and compare it to where you are now, and even like your other tracks that you did just shortly afterwards as just Danimal Cannon, like especially for like that era, 2005, 2006, the growth was straight upwards.
Production was definitely something that I focused on heavily in Dwelling of Duels, and the tools that were just starting to come out that were awesome at that time. And honestly, like the stuff I learned doing those tracks, like I use every day. In fact, I'm using some of the same tools today that I was using back in like 2007 or 8 or something.
Really?
Or at least versions of them, like updated versions of plugins, and like maybe I was using 3.0 back in 2007 or 8, and now it's 8 or 9.0, but
right, or maybe it was 3.0 back then and now it's 3.2.
Yeah,
some plugins update at that rate,
right.
So speaking of all that, how did you find DoD, and how did you get involved in the first place?
So I think what happened was I was on the Metroid Metal message boards before Metroid Metal was a band. Metroid Metal was just a studio project for Stemage to post music on the internet. So I was on the message board for that, and a member of that message board named Kirby, he was like, "Hey, everyone's got to check out this thing called Dueling of Duels. They're doing this thing called Tornado of Solos for the Castlevania 3 Clockwork track," and like all the entries, or maybe not all of them, but like the top entries in there are mind-blowingly good to the point where like I listen to them today and I'm still like, oh yeah, that's why I decided to learn how to do sweep picking. I think that that House Clockwork video like changed the way I play guitar.
It is a mind-blowing video to watch.
Yeah. And so that made me go check out like, oh, there's this cool thing called Dueling of Duels. There seems to be a lot of people who are excited about it. There's lots of really cool music in there. Maybe I can start, recording some music for that. I had recorded some really, really bad covers before that. And I was like, oh, here's a place for me to post my really bad covers that I'm doing.
You were like, guys, check this out. Final Fantasy VII, you're not going to believe it.
You're not going to... I thought I was like a big deal for having done that because there's so many parts. It's like doing like a 15-minute track. Well, it wasn't 15 minutes, but it felt like it. It was easily way more complex than I should have taken on, but it worked.
I think that's a recurring theme with newbie producers as well, because I did the same thing. People put on these ambitious medleys and things like that, which, I would love to hear you revisit that track. I think you could do that thing some amazing justice in 2021. That'd be amazing to hear.
I could do a lot better than I did in 2005. I'll tell you that. So back in 2005, let me tell you about my guitar rig in 2005. Okay. I had my guitar and I had my Metal Zone pedal, and it was plugged directly into my line-in jack. And that was how I recorded guitars for like the first 4 or 5 DoD tracks.
And that's what brought you to the Metal Zone.
Right. You are entering the Metal Zone. And people were like, oh, you don't have any cabinet sounds. And I was like, it sounds great. I don't know what you're talking about.
What kind of speakers were you working on at this point? Were they like really crappy, like HP desktop speakers or something?
They were absolutely HP desktop speakers. I didn't have a bass guitar either for like my first like 7 tracks. And then I don't know how many tracks, but at some point I started recording bass using a tuned down acoustic guitar. It was really bad.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
The workaround.
I was just a kid, right? You use what tools you got, eventually I bought a bass specifically for recording music. So
yeah, but I mean, creative solutions. So props to you for that. When so I kind of want to go a bit even farther back before DoD, because with DoD you were already recording stuff. How did you even get started? Just like home recording, like home production. What was like the inspiration to learn and teach yourself all that kind of stuff?
It was definitely Metroid Metal and Stemage. Like I heard his stuff in early 2003. I think I heard his Brinstar version. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. And I joined the forums and I would tune in on some of like the threads because a lot of people would ask Grant, who's doing recordings that like sounded really good for the time. How are you recording this? What are you doing? And I remember he would record on an 8-track and use a drum machine that he would splice all these parts together. And he had a SM58 that he like would hold in a shoe because he didn't have a mic stand to record his guitars and stuff like that. And like, I guess joining a musical forum with tons of other musicians, like people share their ideas and tips and tricks all the time. So for me, like I just became a big forum nerd, and I was like, I want to try this. I see other people doing this thing, like, and it's exciting enough to me to inspire me to want to try to do it. And so I was like, maybe I could plug my Metal Zone into a sound card, and sound came out, and
And
that's
you're
how
like,
it started.
whoa, I've recorded a sound.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
it just goes downhill from there, right?
Well, I think I started off with like Sound Recorder, the program that came with Windows, and you could only do 1 minute at a time, and I would record dumb little riffs, and uh, but I think I like found on Kazaa like Acid Pro or something like that. I think a cracked version of Acid Pro. I'd probably put a bunch of like malware on my computer doing it, but
Download like 1,000 worms from like the torrent where you're getting the cracked version of everything.
yeah,
What a simpler time
yeah, it
when
was
everything had malware.
Limp Bizkit crawling.exe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love having people on here to talk about like I guess I've interviewed quite a few people on here who all kind of came of age musically in that same era, like early mid 2000s, and I love hearing all the people's stories about like different software they were using and different like ways that they were recording stuff, and you know none of them are like good. Like they're always like, yeah, SM57 in a shoe or Metal Zone into your sound card and things like that. It's just really interesting to me to see how far we've come.
Well, the mid 2000s was a ultra exciting time to like be in that like home recording scene, because that's when all that like cool software started to really take off. Like the technology completely changed uh, once like the Line 6 pod came out and the
Yeah.
drum kit from hell came out, and all of a sudden you have these things called dynamic multi-samples on, you know, your drums. And I mean, when I downloaded again a cracked version of the drum kit from hell back in 2005 or something, and I was manually splicing together the samples. There weren't like I had like snare 2, snare 5, snare
But you had
6,
like a
and
bunch of just wave files that you were
yeah,
just like,
I
oh
had
my
one
god.
shots, and I was manually humanizing by volume and choosing different samples. Like I remember
Wow.
snare 2 was like my good rim shot, like loud sample. Um, and back in the day, you know, you had to, you had to, there wasn't even torrents back then. There was literally just file sharing. Uh, but you had to crack stuff because nobody had money for this stuff. You know, I was a kid in college at like age 19, 20 or something like that. And now, you know, I pay for my software because I make a living with it,
Right.
but I learned how to use it all using crack stuff back in the 2000s. And wasn't really like, I didn't even have any dreams of like doing it professionally. I literally was just having fun with my internet buddies, like making dumb stuff.
Right. Just having a good time, just cranking
Yeah.
out video game tunes.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, you know, you'll see people on YouTube making a living, you know, doing video game tunes. But back in 2005, like that was so far from anyone's mind. Like it was purely a dumb little passion project.
Wow. Crazy. Crazy to think about how
Yeah.
much the world has changed and how much like video game music itself has like kind of become its own genre, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so, with that, I kind of want to segue into talking about how you achieved that goal of becoming, you know, someone who does indeed make music for video games and stuff like that. So I know, like, I think one of your biggest hits was the track that you had in Just Shapes and Beats.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was that a track that I didn't exactly do my research on this, but I know I've known about that track for a long time. Was it one that you made specifically for the game, or was it like a licensed
No, they
deal?
licensed it from me. So I
Okay.
wrote that track. And when they were doing the development for the game, the developer messaged me and was like, hey, we want to use this track. They were already using like a dozen of my tracks before that. But that one, they decided to sort of make the first big boss battle and use it in a couple of the story mode sequences. And it's funny because it's so not characteristic of my general writing style. At the time, I was playing a ton of chiptune shows, and most of the chiptune artists that I was playing with were playing really banging EDM music on Game Boys. And I was like, man, I want to do that. Like, they're pretty much what happens to me all the time is I see somebody else doing something that's rad, and I'm like, wow, I want to do that. And I go and do that.
That's totally valid.
Yeah. So like that's why I started recording heavy metal covers of video games, is because I saw Stemage and like Vert and House doing it, and I was like, I want to do that. That seems really cool. I can try. And so I made like essentially an EDM song, and it did super super well, and it's kind of crazy.
That's
But
awesome.
you kind of had a question about what, transitioning or
So I was also going to talk about yeah. So I remember seeing you play at BitGen in
okay.
Baltimore the last time that they were at the Sonar, which was my first time I went to BitGen. You played. It was when like I think what was the super group that was around that your guitar player from Arm Cannon was also in. He was singing. It
Those
had
Who
like
Fight?
Amanda. Yes, Those Who Fight. I think it was one of their like first shows. It was that same night. You were there. Arm Cannon was there. Mega Rain was there. I saw you do your set, your like 2 Game Boy set, and I was like, oh my god. I had heard about Arm Cannon, but
Oh, thank
I
you.
had never heard your solo stuff, and so I know. Yeah, you kind of like went from. I'm kind of paraphrasing your history here. I don't know all of it, but I know that you kind of moved into like your solo stuff and started doing chip tunes and things, and then uh, was it from that point you kind of got like offers from people, be like, hey, would you like to make some chip music for my video game or things like that?
Um, Partially. Like I started making chiptune music just as like a gag almost. I mean, I started Arm Cannon as a gag too. Everything I do is a gag, and then it turns into something serious. Like doing Trek Watch, like I don't
Right.
know. It's something I'm doing for fun. If it does well, cool. But like Arm Cannon wasn't supposed to be like, a 15-year project or however long we've been doing it. And neither was Danimal Cannon. Like I literally wanted to make backing tracks so that I could do like jammy guitar solos, like freeform sets. But I
Okay.
don't write music like that. It turned out very differently. Uh, so I went to some chiptune shows in 2009, and I fell in love with it. And I said the exact same thing that when I saw DoD is like, oh, this is super cool. I want to do that. So I started doing that, and I had a couple hookups, like just having done video game music in Arm Cannon, of like good places to play shows like Philadelphia and over at Magfest. Back when Magfest wasn't quite as big as it is today,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and my first show, a couple people who were there. Um, Run shows in different places, like in New York and in what do you call it, in New York and in Philadelphia, and so they were offering me shows after my first show.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, all right, that's cool. And also, there was a website. It was called 8-Bit Collective, and they would do every week a ranking. Like people could vote or upvote tracks or something, and you could have like the top track for a week or something like that. And I ended up having the top track once or twice. It felt really good, like in your internet, like points or something like that.
Yes, give me the dopamine. Yes.
Oh, it was so bad because it's like competitive too, where you're like, oh, but my track's better than that number one track, and like any track that goes number one like gets like tons and tons of views. It was good but bad. Like I definitely thrive a little bit under a little competition, uh, but just kind of like DoD is a competition in a way.
Right. Yeah.
But I did those tracks, and I got a couple shows, and then I think a game developer messaged me because the mobile game market was starting to emerge. And all of a sudden, there was all these studios that needed music. Like And a lot of them were like developers that were right out of school or whatever. And a lot of the developers that started making mobile games, like they were the people who were listening to my DoD tracks and stuff, or they would listen to me on 8-Bit Collective or something, and so they messaged me to do some mobile games starting in like 2011, 2010 or something like that. I don't remember exactly when it was, but uh, yeah, it would kind of just weirdly coincided that I was making chiptune music at
At
a
the perfect
time,
time.
at the perfect time. And not only that, I guess this is the other big thing, is in doing DoD stuff for 5 or 6 years, DoD and Arm Cannon stuff, I had been studying video game music kind of intensely um, ever since I started doing that, because I would break apart the tracks and figure out how they were made, and like even go through the sound effects and be like, oh, cool, how do they make these sound effects? And you also pick up little things like, oh, this is how they implement those sound effects, and this is a menu sound, and this is a one-up sound. Like, oh, the one-up sound in Mega Man 3, that's just a major scale arpeggio, like going really fast.
Right.
So it's actually every note in the major scale, I think. And
Oh,
so, yeah. And you kind of pick up on these things like, oh, if I want to do like a one-up, oh, you just do the major scale really fast or something. Like that's
that's how you codify that sound of like, good job. Level up.
exactly,
Yeah.
and if you want it like a neutral menu sound, if you need it to be tonal, you can do like a fourth or a fifth if you want to do any harmony, because those are kind of neutral tones in there. And you can really play with like the emotion of music in sound effects, and like whether they're like dun da, you just lose or something, or da da da, when you get a power up.
Right.
So
Right.
I had unintentionally been studying video game music at a pretty hardcore level for like 5 or 6 years before a game developer ever had reached out to me, like, hey, could you do these things? And I was like, actually, I know all of this stuff. Cool. um,
Yes, of
and
course. I would love to. Thanks for the
yeah,
money.
and it was kind of a really strange process where they were like, what's your rate? And I was like, oh no, what is my rate? Like googling
Yeah.
like, what is a rate for these things, because I have no idea.
Hmm.
uh, and it's been just a pretty organic process. Like I've been lucky enough to play at some events where, I mean, it turns out a lot of fans of chiptune and game music are game developers themselves. Like, surprise, surprise. So being able to play at all these events over the course of 15 years, like, has gotten me in front of a lot of eyeballs. And I must have done a decent enough job at those shows for somebody to say, oh, cool, I want this person to do my soundtrack. Like, I know that Disaster Piece did the Fez soundtrack because he played a show in Montreal that Phil Fish was at.
Wow.
And like, that's how that happens, kind
That's
of.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then you could probably follow that trail all the way down to like It Follows and all that, because didn't Disaster Piece do that soundtrack
Yep.
too?
That's
Yeah.
exact. Like, and don't get me wrong, once you do a really big game, like, you're almost like a
Yeah.
made man, I think. But
That's true. That's true.
yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It
There's
was
a
really organic like that.
would you say this is like a kind of, I've started doing freelance myself recently, and it's not game music or anything like that, but would you say there's like a, were you ever like pursuing certain gigs, or would you say there was like a majority of your stuff was kind of just through word of mouth and people would reach out to you or something like that? Did you ever feel like you had to go and like fishing for work at any point?
No, I haven't. I will say that I'm lucky that I'm a pretty social person, and I
Right.
enjoy meeting new people, and I enjoy like hanging out, like all night and stuff like that. And like, oh, cool. And I also keep in touch with people too. Like, I'm pretty active online. So if I've had plenty of cases where somebody who added me as a friend in like, you know, 2013 hits me up in 2018, like, hey, I'm doing this thing. And we just chit chat about, I don't know, maybe Star Trek online or something. And they're like, hey,
Yeah.
we need somebody for this thing. And they say, it's who you know. And like, I just happen to have met a lot of people and kept in touch with a lot of people. And I know some people who aren't like that, who they really, don't like to meet new people so much, or they don't keep in touch because they don't use the internet a lot. And that sort of stuff, like, unfortunately matters because it is who you know. And for me, it wasn't an active, like sneaky, like trying to hobnob with the right people kind of thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I probably said hello to somebody who I had no business talking to once or twice, but like, for the most part, it was all really organic. And I just happened to sort of be in the right places at the right times with the right personality and the right kind of music, I guess. Like, there's so much luck involved. Like,
Yeah.
I can't express that enough in some ways.
I totally believe it. I mean, I know personally on my end, the amount of people that I've met at MagFest and from going to that over the couple of years has just been like astronomical, and just like shaped so much about everything from like where I work to where I live, honestly, because I live here, and like I live with people that I met through DoD and VGM bands and stuff. So it's crazy.
It is crazy how it changes your life. Like, my life is way different. Like, I think what happened with me is I finished my degree in like molecular biology, and I was going to get a job in a lab. And I was like, before I look for a job, I got a bunch of shows coming up. I had just started playing shows with this band called Metroid Metal. And like, we started doing all these crazy shows. And then I did like, I started doing the chiptune thing and started getting invited to go on tour and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, there's never going to be like that ending, is there? Uh-oh.
Yeah, until the pandemic hits, and then all the shows get canceled, and you're like, what do I do?
True.
But then we make online shows, and it's very good. Martial Art had a question here. Said, was Mag 9 your first chip show?
I believe it was, yeah.
No.
Yeah, first chip show. I mean, it's funny because like mag chip shows at that time were nothing. Like, I think there was 15 people there tops. I think literally Mag said, like, here's a stage, like, if you guys can use it at noon for an hour or 2 hours or something like that. And it was my first show ever, and it totally sucked, at least compared to my modern stuff, in my opinion. But that was my first show, yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Like any show has to find its footing and then grow over time.
And the only reason I got booked is because I was friends with the guy that, was organizing it. And I knew him from MagFest and from Arm Cannon related stuff. So, I just got like a fast track when I started doing chip music. Like, I just already knew all the right people, and we're already going to a bunch of events like BitGen and stuff like that. Like, oh, Arm Cannon's already playing there? Well, we'll just book you too. So
right,
like that and Nerdapalooza and a bunch of other places. Like, there was a long period of time where I was playing 2 or 3 shows at some of these festivals.
That's awesome. I mean, I know, I remember like seeing like the bills for some of these events, and it'd be like, yeah, Danimal Cannon and Stem and Metroid Metal and Arm Cannon's playing. It was like, does this guy get any time to sleep?
It's a lot of notes to remember, but whatever. I made it happen, and I tried to take advantage of all the opportunities I could, because why not?
Yeah, for sure. I totally understand it. So speaking of music and bands and all that, let's go ahead and listen to a couple tracks.
Ooh.
So when I was talking to Dan before he came on today, I was like, hey, you can pick any songs you want. We'll play any songs you want. They don't have to be DoD tracks. And he says, okay, and then sends me 2 DoD tracks. So
oops.
That's totally fine, though. We're going to listen to some really good ones. The first one we're going to listen to is actually featuring Chris Dugosh, who's in the chat here, Q-Bosh. We're going to listen to Let's Attack Aggressively from Contra 4, followed by Mega Manhood 3, The Blasting of Hardman. Keep it here, everybody. We'll see you on the other side. This is Dueling of Duels. Welcome back, everybody. We just heard Mega Manhood 3, The Blasting of Hard Man by Danimal
What a
Cannon.
title.
What a title. How did you come up with that name? Tell us your thought
I was
process.
I was trying to create a fictional porn name. Like, yeah.
And you came up with
that's it.
Mega
Mega Manhood 3.
3. Nice to meet you. I'm Mega Manhood 3.
Yeah. No,
While
not
we were
like a porn title, not a porn actor. Like,
oh, okay.
yeah, like it's the third edition of Mega Manhood.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
Okay. While we were oh, your video is getting real fuzzy. That's cool. You're covered in what are the I'm trying to make a Star Trek joke, but I don't know enough about the original series. Triffids, the fuzzy things, tribbles. Yeah, you're covered in tribbles. Oh man, you look like a Aphex Twin cover right now. It's kind of cool.
Sweet.
We'll just roll with it. Yeah, while those tracks were playing, I mentioned to Danimal, we figured out that his last entry was November 2013. Pink Tanks Can't Jump from Blaster Master Month, and you were saying you intended to enter for the 15th year anniversary, but couldn't make it, unfortunately. And I said, hey, the 20-year anniversary of Dueling Duels is coming up in about 2 years.
That's too many years.
Too many years. 20 years. It's crazy to think about how much like history and stuff there is with DoD and how much I can't get over your video. It just keeps getting worse and worse, but I love it. Wonder if I can refresh.
We've run into a quantum filament.
There we go. Oh, as soon as you said that, thank you, Captain. As soon as you said that, it fixed it. Have you ever played the Starship Bridge Simulator, Artemis? Have you ever played that game?
No, I've only played. I met the people who made it at MagFest one year, and I was really excited about it. But I've played Star Trek Bridge Crew.
Okay.
In VR for PlayStation 4.
But
I haven't played Artemis. It was passable.
Okay.
It was okay. I
think it's hard to recreate the experience of the TV show.
Not only that, but the TV show is like about human people making decisions, not like about warp coils and phaser banks and stuff like that. So It was kind of cool, but it was also kind of terrible. It like has to be heavily abstracted. It's not a fantastic game.
Sure.
But it has a cheap thrill of being on the bridge and being like, oh my God, I'm raising my shields. Anyways.
And then someone has to be the captain, and it's like the captain is the one who gets to have the fun, kind of. So that's how I experienced it when I got to play.
Yeah, I didn't do Artemis, so right. But it seemed really cool. I was super drunk at MagFest talking to the people who made it for a long time.
It was fun, but I agree. It turns it more into just like a game where you happen to be piloting a spaceship rather than like a Star Trek experience.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still cool to feel like you're in those kind of situations. So you have an upcoming show that's happening in a few weeks here in Pittsburgh. Is that right?
Yeah, Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. And that's October 2nd and 3rd, I believe. Awesome.
And you are also being joined by, well, you're not personally being joined by them, but also attending is Viking Guitar and his band, we also interviewed on here it's been a few months, I guess, since we interviewed Eric. But their whole band is going to be up there too.
Yep, them and Deathlehem, if people are into them, which I am. I even have a Deathlehem t-shirt right here.
Oh, you've got it prepared.
Oh, yeah. This is not on purpose. I just happen to have one here. But
that's awesome. Deathlehem is a lot of fun. I really love their shtick.
I love Deathlehem. I went on tour with them in like 2017 and had an absolute blast.
That's awesome.
Yes.
If anybody in the chat has any questions for Danimal, please field them my way. I have basically exhausted my list of questions besides one question that has been on my mind for a very long. Well, it's two. One, which we kind of answered. I said, when are you going to make another DoD entry? And so maybe we'll see at the 20th anniversary. We'll see.
Is it 2023? Is that when it's happening?
Yeah. I think it'll be September of 2023 is 20 years.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
That's nutty.
Second question, and this can also kind of go towards Cubosh in the chat. When's that new arm cannon coming out?
Oof.
I've been waiting since I bought Leg Vacuum 3 from you in a bathrobe at MagFest one Sunday morning. I've been waiting for the next album to come out.
So we've been writing for this new album. It's gotta be for like 3 years now, which is whatever. Bands do that sometimes. And we have like a million sketches of things, but nothing final. Like I think we run into paralysis of like picking anything final because then you have to like decide. And a lot of times with sketches, you're like, yeah, we pretty much got it. Like something like that. And then we'll write a solo or do a hard part later. Well, that's hard work. We don't want to do that.
Because this has been an original album you guys are working on, right?
Yeah. And so we've played like 2 tracks at MagFest the last time we were there. And but unfortunately, during the pandemic, we didn't get together at all. And after the pandemic, even though we're kind of still in it, we've done one show and we spent all of our time like getting prepared for that show. So we probably haven't touched writing since September of 2019 because we were prepping for MagFest for several months. And then, we've just had to take time off, which sucks. But we have a lot of exciting material, though. I am occasionally excited about it. But there's some cool riffs
coming down the pipe.
Yeah, lots of chord changes and maybe melodies, riffs, and weird time signatures.
Metric modulation. I know you're a fan. Oh my god!
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I kind of love metric modulations. And I kind of hate them.
Fair.
Yeah. Like now that I have bands that play to click tracks sometimes, it's like, oof, did we really need to write a metric modulation there? Like now it just becomes an insane hard part.
Right? You're like, how does this, how many beats over how many quarter notes?
Yeah.
There's I don't know if this question is serious or not, but I'm going to read it to you. Do you agree that STEM students and humanities students need to unite against business students?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, like you won't find anyone seriously working in STEM that isn't a massive fan of the humanities. Like, I mean, maybe there's like a robot out there, but for the most part, like scientists and mathematicians are constantly thinking about things like philosophy and the humanities, like, and how that plays into things. Like, I haven't met one scientist that isn't a massive fan of art. And business is obviously evil, as taught to us by the Ferengi, among many other examples. That's
true.
I agree with
that. In our perfect
1,000%.
future, we don't even have currency. We don't need money. Business doesn't exist anymore.
I don't know. Latinum is definitely worth something.
There's a lot of questions about, Deep Space Nine, for all the good things it did bring up some weird questions about, like, how do humans pay for anything? How do they get things from places that only accept currency? Where do you,
Like, what if they outlawed replicators? I don't know.
Yeah, right. And what's the deal with that one episode of Next Gen where there's like a replicator store that they go shopping at to buy a birthday present? Why do we never see that again? Who knows?
Is that where Worf is trying to buy a wedding present for Keiko and O'Brien? Okay. Yeah.
And Crusher takes him there, and it's like, oh, what is this? And we never see that room again.
It's fine. It's fine.
Lame Genie, our good friends over at Lame Genie, have a question. I'm pretty sure this is probably either Jeff or Kyle. What was the significance of the gas station pickle at that show?
Well, first off, I want to say Lame Genie, you guys just did like a Turtles in Time cover, I think, on YouTube. and it flipping rocks. I was
Those guys are
loving
so
it.
good.
Okay, so Gas Station Pickle. Lim Genie, you've traveled as a band to a show before, right? Like in a van or something. It just evolves usually, like when you spend a large amount of hours with people in an enclosed space, just into absurdity. Because you have nothing to say to each other and you're all just right next to each other and you just say ridiculous things and come up with little road memes and things like that. And yeah, Arm Cannon found this pickle at a gas station and decided it was the most hilarious thing that day.
It was
And
not a pickle. It was a spicy sausage.
right, you're right. It was a hot mama, I
Hot
think.
mama.
Yeah. And then just because I was obsessed with it for no reason, I started to post like social media posts like building up the hot mama sausage like all weekend. And then we decided to make it a big thing for no reason because it made us laugh. So thank you for asking. It was mostly just a dumb band road trip joke, and we had a blast with it. And I'm happy it's documented forever now.
Can I tell you something? I
What's that?
unironically really enjoy hot mama pickled sausages.
You are a terrible human, and wow,
I
think
buy
less of
them.
you.
I have bought dozens of those sausages and eaten every one. And
Oh,
I
no.
agree that they're. I understand how people could think they're kind of nasty and vinegary smelling, but I think they're a good road snack. So
You know what, Austin?
assuming.
I did not mean to food shame you. I'm trying to be a better person because, like, if that's what makes you happy, man, you ain't hurting anybody. You go
No, but
live your
one time,
best pickle sausage life.
one time I was at the gas station and I saw one that had been like the seal had been broken on it, and all of the pickled juice had drained out, and it was like a shriveled version of that sausage, and it made me not want to buy the sausage that day. So I was scared away by the nasty.
That was the only one they had. Like, oh, like you couldn't buy a different pickle.
No.
sausage?
I mean like there was multiple in the container, but I saw the nasty shriveled up one and touched it by accident, and I was like, ew, I don't want any of these now.
Yeah, it
But
ruined.
then the next time I went back and got one. It was only a temporary disgust.
That's a beautiful story.
Thank you. Here's a question
Lord.
from this is JC. I believe that's one of the mods for your server, right? Your Discord server. He says, with Dread coming out, is Metroid Metal going to do covers of the new stuff?
That's a good question. You'll have to ask Stemage that question because he does all of the arranging for that, except for Autobots Decepticon Battle. I did that one.
That's a great one. You know,
Yeah.
there's a moment in that song that I call the kickflip lick. Kickflip lick. Because every time I hear it, I think of someone like doing a kickflip or like going up over, like someone on a skateboard doing like a really cool trick. And it's
Can you sing it?
Yeah,
what part of the song is it?
It's one of the parts where like the drums and everything are going, and like kind of everything stops except maybe the drums, and it's just like an arpeggio, like but it's like the
I know exactly what
spotlight.
you're talking about.
The spotlight is shown on you right there, and every time I hear it, I'm like kickflip lick.
There we go. Yeah, I think it's root, minor third, fourth, fifth, and then back down.
Yeah, it's so. Ooh, you're fuzzy again. I love it. It's a beautiful lick, and I love that arrangement too. That whole track is amazing.
It's one of my favorite tracks of all time.
Did you get to meet Vince DiCola when he was at MagFest?
Not only did I get to meet Vince DiCola,
you played with him, didn't you?
I jammed with him for an hour in the jam space.
That's right.
And he was so good. Like, he made me look bad in the best way. But I probably had a smile glued to my face for an hour straight. And it's funny because I asked a couple of my friends in Metroid Metal if they could join me. I was like, yo, I'm going to go jam with Vince. Like, you should join me down there. And they're like, oh, we got to do Viking guitar practice.
Ugh.
And they couldn't join me because I had to play with Viking guitar and do a practice. And I was like, sorry, dog. I tried.
Wow.
Yeah, but Vince is fantastic. I actually exchange emails with him once in a great while. He's written me some really thoughtful, nice emails. And I checked in on him like during the pandemic because I know that he got COVID.